Hi there, do you hear me?
I hear you.
Okay, just checking my audio. Almost time to go. Who's here?
We got Daniel. I see Carter.
Yeah, and me. I think that's about it so far. I know everybody knows we're starting at 5, right?
I think so.
Got 8 participants.
I'm just walking out on the street. The helicopters are above and
Oh, swell. You can report
all
what's
the
going
excitement.
on. Hi, Michael. Can you let Michael in? Somebody?
Yeah,
Yeah, elevate him. In other words, hi there.
yeah, we will.
Okay, I'm just going to write his name, Michael Levine. And we have 1 more minute. Let's see who's in our participants. Attendees, we have 3. Oh, George. George Haikalis needs to be elevated to the committee. Somehow he's as an attendee right now. Oh, hi, Judy Pesson is there. Okay. I figured she might show. Good. Okay, so we've got Katie Woodnarrow of Community Folks. And now we have George. We've got me, Carter. We've got Dan, George, Katie, and Joe Flayhaven. But I don't know where the rest of our committee is. So I think I'll wait a little. Oh, Katie wants to know how she can get a dial-in number.
I can go ahead.
She's here. Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. So,
Katie, do you need a different dial-in number, or are you okay with what you have?
Katie, can you hear us? Here's Lois. Hi, Lois.
Hi, Shirley. How are you this early evening?
Early evening, right? And dark,
Yeah.
right?
No cocktails, though. Where's the cocktails?
You should have brought them. Are you still up in Massachusetts?
No, I'm here. I'm in
you're here.
Manhattan.
Okay.
My son's up there.
That I knew. I was wondering if he
was. Maybe Thanksgiving. We'll see.
Oh, that would
How are you?
Oh, I'm fine.
Good.
Let's see now. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. There's 7 of us. And there's Michael. Michael, I see your jacket. I don't see the rest of you. Michael Levine. Strange. Oh, yeah, he walked away. So I think we're going to wait just a few more minutes because there you are, Michael.
I'm back.
We'll wait a little bit longer because we really don't have a quorum, I don't think. Let's see what we've got. Let's see who our attendees are now. So we've got David Andrews. David, you're from DOT, right? David?
Hi there.
Oh, here's Ritu. Hi, Ritu. So we've got Emily Gelfart, Jacob Priley. Hi, Jacob. We got Jake McNally, Jerry Gluck. Hi, and Judy Pesson as our guests. Okay. And I think we may have enough people to start. Let's see. We've got Shirley. We've got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, I think we have enough. I think we're going to begin. So anyhow, good evening, everybody that's here. And glad to see there's a bunch of you that are here. And I see Ritu now. Hi there, Ritu. For those of you who don't know, I'm Shirley Secunda, the chair of the Traffic and Transportation Committee, and this is their November meeting. And I think I'm going to call the roll, but I think some folks are just not here, but at least you'll get their names, so you'll know who our committee is. So bear with me. Whoever is here, just say, hi, I'm here, or whatever, and I'm going to start calling that roll. So, okay, Ritu Shatri,
Here.
and you're here. Ritu is our vice chair. So, Joe Gallagher, I saw your name. Well, I know he's here. Okay, Jan?
I'm here, Shirley. I'm here.
Yes, I know. I saw your name before. I put you back. Thank you, Joe. Okay, and
I'm
Jack
here.
Liff is not here yet. Dan Miller, just say hi so we can see you.
I am here. Hello.
There you are, Dan. Okay. DM and Ed Ma, I don't think he's arrived yet. Lois Rakoff, just say hi, so you know who you are. Lois.
Hi.
Okay, there she is. And Anthony Wong is going to be a little late. And I think Adam Zeldin will be too.
I'm here.
Oh, you're here. Oh, okay. You're going to leave a little early. Is that it?
I'm going to leave a little early. That's
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
Hello, Edma.
Oh, and Ed's here too. Great. Okay.
Shirley, did you catch me?
I didn't. I called you, but hi there and welcome, Janet. Okay. Hey, we got a good turnout for 5 p.m. Anthony's coming a little later because he does have to work. I saw Joe Flayhaven. Joe, you wanted to just yell? Saw your name. Whatever. I'm not marking you here because I know you're here. And George Icalis.
I'm here, but I don't see my picture.
No, you got to hit video. So you start video on the bottom. And then we'll see your picture. And then we'll see your pretty face. And I know, of course, Carter Booth is here. And Michael Levine.
There I am.
Yeah. And Michael, there's George. There's your picture. And Michael Levine. And
hello.
Katie Bordenaro so far from the board. And welcome to our guests as well. And
Shirley, just so you know, I have promoted Aaron Segura.
Oh, great.
And Kim Rancourt to panelist.
Oh, excellent.
I don't see Rami Metal. Is that it?
Yeah, Rami Metal would be number one also with the Busway, 14th Street Busway. Well, anyhow, whenever his name gets here, we'll pull him in. And then later there are two folks from Bike Share that will do the second item. I saw David Andrews' name, and I think I saw Lily Gordon Coven too. Do you see that?
Hi.
Oh, there you are.
Good evening.
Hi there, Lily. And I think that it's David Andrew. I saw his name before.
Yeah, he's here too.
Okay. Anyhow, okay, so welcome everybody. Glad to see you this nice early hour on a winter day or late fall. And for those of you who aren't familiar with our procedure, I'll just try to give a little short review. Okay, so as you probably know, we've got 2 items on our agenda tonight. And the first one will be an update on the 14th Street Busway. And the second will be an update on Infill for Citibike. So, and both of them are going to be presented, by the way, by the Department of Transportation, DOT. Okay, so each item is heard separately as an entity, and it's presented by whoever is sponsoring it, presented or discussed or summarized, whichever they're doing tonight. And that would be DOT in both cases. And once those items are summarized, the Traffic and Transportation Committee members usually ask questions along with board members, I guess, who are board members, and then we open it to the floor. And so that is part of the procedure. Then the committee goes into what we call business section. We discuss each of the items. I mean, if there's 10 items, we discuss them. We got 2 tonight, we'll be discussing 2. And we deliberate whether we want to do a resolution, whether we want to comment in any way. And that is not the end. That's just the committee decision. We take a vote. At the time of business section, everybody's welcome to stay and listen to what we have to say. But that is not the time for anyone else to talk but the committee. It's purely the committee's business session. Okay, but that's not the end. We have then a full board meeting. And I'm trying to remember, does anybody remember the date of the full board meeting? Do I have that written down? No, I don't.
19th.
Okay,
The ninth.
so November 19th, and again, you can
Yeah.
get to the full board meeting through the community board calendar, and there's a link to the full board meeting. And at the full board meeting, that is when the full board, all the committees, not only the Traffic and Transportation Committee, discuss the items from each committee. That is if they're resolutions. And otherwise summaries are given. And that's, I think, about it. We have ground rules. I think that they're a little different now because right now we're virtual, so I can't say to you, don't shout out in the meeting, but please don't shout out in the meeting. You'll see in the participants, panelists and attendees, that at the bottom, and I'm sure that most of you have used Zoom and are aware of this, there's a little instruction, a button there, raise your hand. If you have anything to tell us when we're up to having you ask questions or comments, hit raise hand and we will be sure to call on you. Ritu is very sharp and that she usually overlooks that whole stuff. And she will probably, either she or I will call on you. So don't worry, you'll be heard. Besides that, for the most part, we keep you mute. Just don't shout out, it keeps the meeting from progressing. I think that's really about it. Committee, can you think of anything I haven't covered in terms of procedure? Okay, so we're going to move on to item 1. And let's see then. So that would be from DOT, we have Kim Rancourt. Is she here?
I'm here.
Yeah, oh,
Hi,
great.
Shirley.
Hi, Kim. And Aaron Subira. And I think Aaron's here, right? Aaron, are you here?
Yes, hi.
Hi there. And did Rami get here yet, Neptal? Okay, well, I guess he will. Is he going to come, Aaron? Is Rami coming?
I don't know for certain, so we can definitely get going without him, though.
Oh, okay, great. Okay. So these are our guests from DOT who are going to discuss the 14th Street Busway. I should tell you in advance that DOT had asked us to submit questions. They wanted at least to be able to handle kind of the meat of what we're concerned about. And so our committee submitted a whole bunch of questions, and I believe that DOT will be addressing those questions, right, gang? Right, Kim and Aaron?
Yeah, so we did go through them and look, came up with some answers, but I think it's easiest probably if we just kind of give a summary of what's happened and the status that hits on most of the questions, and there's a few more specific ones that we could get into as well. And
right. Okay,
yeah.
So then after that, if the committee has any more questions, raise your hand and I'll call on you. And you can ask the other questions. And we ask our guests also to use the question format. And as I say, with that, you can either raise your hand, or by the way, you can throw things into chat too. And Ritu is great. I'm giving you all that responsibility there, Ritu.
I'll try to manage, Shirley.
Somehow she'll manage, right? Anyhow, she'll take whatever questions come up in chat and she'll amalgamate the ones that are similar. And that is how we will do item 1. So Kimberly and Aaron, it's yours.
Thanks. So yeah, we were here at the committee last, I want to say January, with an update. And at that point, we were here with Sam Schwartz, and they gave their summary of their first monitoring report. And then, not long after that, we all ended up in a very different situation with COVID, and we were all at home and we weren't able to come back with an update at that time. And then this past spring, as part of the city's response to the ongoing pandemic, Mayor de Blasio announced a number of measures that would be taken, to address, losing my voice, transportation needs around the city to make sure that New Yorkers could keep getting around efficiently to work and other destinations. So he announced a number of new bike lanes, new bus lanes, and new busways following the success of the 14th Street busway. And so at that time, he also announced that the busway on 14th Street would be made permanent, obviously in part to support the needs for bus service during that time and as we continue to go through this crisis. And then also because the results of the initial monitoring reports had shown that the busway was really working as intended, having increased bus speeds and reliability and ridership, and having minimal negative impacts. And not to say that there haven't been any issues. There have been certainly some localized issues that we've made some adjustments at those locations, and we'll continue to look for ways to make improvements. But overall, we haven't seen the enormous amounts of congestion on side streets, for example, that was feared. And so also at that time, because of the dramatic shift in traffic patterns, it didn't make sense for us to keep collecting and analyzing data as part of the pilot project, since things are so different that the data collected really wouldn't have been very meaningful. And so with that, decision to make it permanent and the complications with the data collection, we haven't continued the quarterly monitoring with Sam Schwartz, but we're still committed to monitoring the situation on the ground and addressing community concerns as they come up. And there was a very specific question about turn counts, and so just a reminder that there's a bunch of data that was collected over the first few months, and that is all available from the Sam Schwartz report online. There were some specific questions about 12th and 13th Streets. Obviously, we know those are an area of big concern for Community Board 2. It came up at the September meeting as we talked about University Place. So we did share with you guys at that time that we have made some changes on 13th Street. And obviously our proposal for University Place was also intended to address some of the congestion and the concerns that had been raised there. We did receive a resolution following that meeting from CB2 asking us to look more comprehensively at University Place. And so we're really happy to hear that there's interest in additional pedestrian safety benefits and public space improvements along a greater stretch of that corridor, but that's a larger project, and so it will take us some time to do that more substantial analysis and design work. And then there were some questions about adding any additional restrictions and or removing the current restrictions, as I understood the questions. And at this point, we don't have any plans to further restrict vehicular access on 14th Street or any changes to actually reduce the restrictions. So it's currently, the access restrictions are intended to stay the same. There was a question about enforcement. And so we have bus lane cameras at each intersection, and buses and trucks are able to drive through or make the turns at those locations, the legal turns, but all other vehicles have to make the right turn at that intersection. And when they go through the intersection instead of turning, then the cameras will give a violation to those motorists. There was a question about side streets and trucks on the side streets. And we understand that there has been a lot of concerns raised about this. Some of those trucks are actually allowed to be on those side streets because they may actually be doing business there. But we still do think that 14th Street in its current configuration actually should draw trucks from the side streets, those ones that are not making local deliveries. It's certainly a much easier route for them to take 14th Street typically. And so we will continue to work with the trucking community and just kind of increase the awareness of that as a good route for them. And then there were a couple of questions about specific to sort of bus ridership that I think are more focused on MTA, and I don't have the answers for those at this time. So those were the sort of our quick summary based on what we had heard. So happy to field more questions related or follow-ups on those questions.
Okay, thank you, Kimberly. I guess we're going to first see if the committee has any questions. Let me just see if anybody on the committee, anybody from Board 2 Do you have any further
Shirley,
questions?
I have a question if I could go
Yes.
first.
Okay, sure we do.
So, Kim, could you expand on what the regulations are currently for truck traffic? Are they required to turn off immediately, or are they allowed to use the busway all the way across?
Trucks are allowed to use the busway. So this, before we started calling it the busway, we referred to it as a transit and truck priority corridor. That was something that came out of conversations with the community when we had the change in plans for the L train. When we were kind of revisiting the proposal, was we wanted to allow trucks to use 14th Street because we were hearing, the big concerns from folks on the side streets about trucks being diverted to their streets. So it is. Trucks and buses are all, and that's we have gotten some questions about sort of commercial vehicles versus trucks. And so while some of the commercial parking regulations refer to specifically to commercial plates, this is truck specific. So even if you're a commercial van, if you're not a truck, then you're not allowed to, but trucks and all types of buses are allowed to travel through. They're not subject to the restrictions on through movements.
Does that answer
Yes.
you, Rita?
And then my follow-up question on that is, one of the things that I've noticed in vehicle traffic downtown, it's different midtown, is that there are very few to no yellow cabs. There seems to be a lot of FHV traffic, but not a lot of yellow cab traffic, and that obviously will change once the pandemic eases. So are you doing anything to anticipate the increase of traffic on side streets from yellow cabs? Are there any plans to include yellow cabs on 14th Street to mitigate any problems on side streets?
No, at this point, we don't plan to add taxis back to 14th Street to allow them to travel through. The intent really is to prioritize the buses. And so, no, we'll obviously continue to monitor, just even if we're not doing the full data collection that we were doing with Sam Schwartz, we'll still monitor conditions on the side streets. And if we're starting to see bigger issues, we can look at potential changes. But I don't believe that one of those changes would be adding them back to 14th Street.
Can I just speak on that? Just for a
Oh,
second?
no, you may
Sorry.
not. Okay, just wait your turn, okay? Because we've got Janet and then we've got Lois and then Dan. So Janet.
When things settle down, will you recommence the counts? I mean, just even for your own edification. Yeah, will you pick up back with pick up with Sam and reevaluate the project, or just continue to evaluate the project?
I don't think we have plans to re-engage in that extensive level of monitoring. We will continue to do, a lot of that, some of that data we can get through means that are sort of ongoing, always accessible. We can always look at travel times, for example. So we can continue to look at what's happening, but we don't have plans to have that extensive monitoring going on. And Aaron can add to that if there's anything to add. Oh, I see Rami is on as well now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else, Janet? Okay, and Lois?
Yes, hi. Thank you for coming to our committee. Can DOT explain how the 14th Street busway that was a trial became permanent without the community's knowledge or input or evaluation from the community? How did it jump from a trial to permanency?
Sure, I can reiterate that this came out of the city and the mayor's response to the pandemic and the desire to ensure that we were providing transportation options and efficient transportation means for folks to get around. And so it was part of a larger decision that included a number of new busways throughout the city, which we are in the process of implementing, along with new bike lanes, new bus lanes, And so it was decided at that time that given the success that it had had and the inability to continue monitoring as we had been, to the extent that we had been, given that the traffic patterns had changed so dramatically, it was decided to make it permanent. Which doesn't mean that we won't still make adjustments or take community feedback or continue to have discussions, but that at that time it was decided that it should remain.
To me, it seems incongruent that the pandemic made the 14th Street busway permanent. I don't see the relationship between the health crisis and not informing the community or even getting the community to evaluate the process of making it permanent.
In other words, what you're saying is you're not happy with the answer, but we do have to go on to the next comments and questions. So thanks.
Certainly.
And Dan, at long last, back to Dan Miller. Dan? What happened to Dan?
Put myself on mute. I'm sorry about that. I thought I was on mute and I put myself on mute. I wanted to follow up on what Ritu was saying, and I think it's really a theme that you're hearing from all the community board members. You know, over the years, we've heard, well, since 14th Street was closed, we've heard endless testimony from residents of 12th and 13th Street that they complain that their quality of life issues related to the increased traffic due to the closure of 14th Street is impacting them. So nearby, we're also looking for new open streets, which is also directly related to 14th Street because we're thinking about University and how well the slow streets working on 13th Street. So when it was mentioned that you might want to consider mitigating that traffic flow with for hire vehicles and letting them use 14th Street, it's a request we've made, and we're hoping that you're going to consider it. I'm hoping that you're not just considering that the matter is closed. It just seems very definitive, everything that you're saying. Just to consider that the 12th and 13th Street might be better used for local traffic, so just residents and more bikeways. That's just my point. It's not really a question. Just disappointment.
Oh, wait, Kimberly, can you comment on that? Because that is kind of a question. Does the entity intend to do that? I think would be the answer of the question.
I'm sorry, can you clarify what that is?
The point is,
a few points made there.
Continuation of the study, and we're hoping that you actually continue it. Is there any chance to look at it while before it becomes permanent, or continue to let the area morph because people are unhappy with many things? We might be hearing from them later. You'll hear from the residents themselves, Kimberly.
So I think even though we're saying that the 14th Street busway is permanent, that doesn't mean that there aren't opportunities to make adjustments on side streets. And as I mentioned, we talked about the University Place back in September, and we heard pretty clearly from the board and from residents that there was a desire to look at that in more detail and to look more comprehensively at the area. So I think we are, we're committing to continue to look at this area and for ways to address the concerns that have been raised, but not by taking out the busway.
So the only thing that relates to that is the for hire vehicles and taxis, maybe to allow them more than just one street. We think that actually directly is part of what the complaints are about. Allow taxis and licensed vehicles to cross. So it's still, that is a 14th Street issue.
And
Understood.
And Kimberly, if I could just ask you to also take into consideration, you're asking a lot from these side streets. It's not an east, 68th or a west 97th. These are small village streets which are now being asked to take on bike lanes. They're being asked to take on open streets. They're being asked to take up restaurants. And in addition to, so there should be some forethought I put into as the traffic levels continue to increase as the pandemic winds down. Obviously, that's not going to happen this year, but over the course of next year, of 2021, certainly, we're asking a lot from our side streets down here in the village, which is not the same as a midtown side street. And considering that, 14th Street is 3 large, robust lanes, each in each direction. That's a lot of public space being given up for a few trucks and a bus that rolls by every 20 or 30 minutes.
So what's the question? Frame it as a question.
The question is, how do you plan to address mitigating the higher needs required now of side streets in the village?
So I think if we want to talk about the traffic volumes and changes on side streets related to the busway, we can, maybe Aaron can touch on some of the data from the report. But with regard to the increased demands on the streets from the current open programs, open streets, open restaurants, certainly that's something that DOT is considering. And, it's been a challenge for us to operate all of these programs. It's been all very new, so we understand and we have the same concerns about the increased demands on curb space on streets and just the changes throughout the city. So I don't have an answer on that at this point, but certainly we're all very aware of the increasing and various demands that we have on these streets and continue to look at them.
Does anybody else, either from the committee or board members, have any other questions? And by the way, I don't think I introduced the chair of the board, which is Carter Booth. Carter, can you show yourself a minute? Just say hi. Or yell hi. Well, whatever. Anyhow, Carter Booth is here too, the chair of the committee board too. And I don't think I introduced him. Anyhow, so I'd like to ask just a couple of follow-up questions, Kim. One is to do with the trucks, and that you do have that awareness that there are trucks within the neighborhood that really shouldn't be there, that they're not doing deliveries, that they're not following any kind of route to get where they're going. And I think our question is what are your plans? What are DOT's plans to do about that? We feel that, there's got to be either some signage or enforcement or both. And I would just like you to elaborate a little bit on that because, hey, as you said, 14th Street was both a truck and transit priority route, and it's supposed to be to accommodate trucks. And our impression is that trucks aren't using them half enough. So can you comment on that a little bit more and what ideas DOT might have to change that balance so that the trucks are really making use of that truckway that's there for them?
Sure. So I know there's been requests for us to install no through trucks or signs prohibiting trucks from side streets. But as you can imagine, those signs, if we put them on certain streets that are not truck, they're already supposed to be on truck routes unless they are making deliveries or for other reasons. But so we'd have to put signs potentially at every street that's not a truck route. So we don't really feel that's a very efficient way of getting that message across. I know we did touch on this in our conversation with Ed recently about potentially guide signage encouraging folks to go to 14th Street. But I think also, as I mentioned, outreach to the trucking industry is probably the best way for us to get that message across. And so I don't know if Rami wants to speak to that at all. I know we've had communications with them in the past, but kind of just making sure that truck drivers realize that they have this option on 14th Street to travel through.
Right. So in other words, would that be kind of having forums or written material or both? Is that what you have in mind when you talk about outreach to the trucking industry?
Yeah, I'll take this. Hey, Shirley.
Oh, hi, Ren.
Good to see you. Yeah, we work up. Sorry, I've got my kids. We've been working with the Trucking Association of New York, and it's been a while since we talked to them about this. So I think now is a good time to sort of reiterate our expectations here. And I know that they were very supportive of the project and wanted 14th Street to be able to move better, and they were happy with it and thought it was working for them. But I do think it's a good idea to touch base with them and say, make sure that your truckers are on 14th and on the side streets. They don't have to be.
Yeah, I mean, how would you just visualize doing that? That's what I'm curious about. There must be some kind of plan, I guess, of getting to the truckers. How do you usually communicate?
I know the folks who represent them, and they've been part of actually some of the other community advisory board meetings that we've had in the other boroughs.
Okay.
Let me just get back to you on this one in a little bit, if you don't mind. But we'll get in touch with them.
Oh, a little action there in the background. Okay. Would they like to comment too? Okay, thanks. Okay, so but nobody else. Then what Rami is saying is it's a good idea to reach the truckers, and he'll tell us a little bit about it later. And I'm just thinking, was there anything else? Oh yeah, just that impact on the side streets. I just wanted to ask you, Kimberly. So, okay, you're aware of it, obviously, that there still is impact. Is there ongoing monitoring right now? Kimberly?
We haven't been collecting any traffic counts at all, really, since the start of COVID. For any project, I mean, I think, as far as I know, Aaron can speak to that more perhaps, but so no, at this point, there hasn't been ongoing monitoring. And yes, we do know that there are some locations where there are some congestion issues that we've, which is why we did come in September with a proposal to try to alleviate some of those issues on 13th Street.
Oh, okay. So in September, maybe we can be hearing something, right?
Well, in September, we brought University Place and the reversal for another block in order to address issues on 13th Street.
That was one.
But that wasn't supported, so.
But I'm talking about for the rest of the, surrounding streets and neighborhood, that kind of thing, or any kind of comprehensive look. Because originally, when the monitoring was done by Sam Schwartz, it was a comprehensive kind of look. Mm-hmm. And realizing, of course, that conditions are very different now. But when would DOT anticipate taking that kind of look again? Obviously, the pandemic ain't over, but what kind of stopgap measures might you all suggest? No answer.
I mean, I don't think we don't have plans to do that extensive level of monitoring that we were doing. We did do, for several months, we did look at that data. We did see positive impacts on bus speeds, on ridership, and those sorts of things. And we did see minimal impact on most side streets. So like I said, there are some locations where we have seen issues, and we have worked to implement, in some cases, small changes like signal timing adjustments or markings adjustments. And in some cases, we came with a larger proposal, like the reversal of University Place for another block to address that issue. That wasn't supported by the board, so we haven't moved forward with that at this point. But so as we see issues, we're willing to look at potential solutions. At this point, with the lower traffic volumes, we haven't had data collection. As I mentioned, we haven't been doing that on a much wider scale than just with regard to this project. We've cut back on our data collection. So I don't, if there's,
so you're kind of seeing how it lays as you go along, right?
What's that?
I guess as you go along, you will kind of assess.
Right. And as I mentioned, we can do like travel time studies, that kind of data we can access after the fact. It doesn't have, it's not, we can get it without doing, putting out our own data collection, like our own tubes in the street. So we do have some data that we can reference as well, even if we're not collecting at this time.
Okay. Rami, are you there? Do you want to say any more? Rami? You want to say anything else?
No, I think that Kimberly got it.
Okay. Great.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm just going to wrap up as a committee, I think, and any other members of CB2, raise your hand if you want to ask a question. Otherwise, I think we're going to go to our attendees. Let's see, we've got Samir Lavinja has his hand up. Samir, what's your question? Samir?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. So it seems like the DOT is taking a very data-driven approach to this whole thing, and I was looking at the results from that Sam Short study, the one that's available on the website. I mean, according to the data, it looks like the vehicle volumes are down on 13th Street. So one thing I'd love to understand is like, when people say like, oh, it's really bad, like, what is there data to support that, or is that mostly just like personal anecdotal experience?
Guess folks on 13th Street can tell you. Is there anybody here from 13th Street?
Samir, this is coming from residents that have participated in meetings, at community board meetings, and have sent emails and letters to Shirley and the community board.
Gotcha. So it's not backed by any data. It's just anecdotal.
Right. I mean, they're not equipped to actually hire Sam Schwartz to do a study. So
Right,
this is,
Well,
these are
you know, I'll follow up with Ritu is that sometimes the best information that you can get is from the folks that live there and are experiencing things.
and
So-
they don't go there for just an hour or two while they do a car count. They're there day in, day out. And so this is where much of our I guess, concern has come from, our local residents.
Yeah, that makes sense. I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't like the DOT didn't have data to support it. It's just anecdotal for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Samir. Oh, Wendy Schenfeld. Wendy?
Hi.
Hi, Wendy. Can't hear you.
How about now?
Yes, Wendy.
Yes.
Okay. I just want to say this process seems very frustrating. I agree completely with Lois and Dan. The response of why it's permanent does not make sense. I disagree strongly with the statement that there are no minimal impacts. I live on 13th Street and have noticed cars on University, cars constantly backed up, honking, and it's a completely different experience than it was before. Also, 14th Street has become practically a pedestrian walkway where most of the time when I want to cross the street, I don't even need to wait for the light to be in my favor. You can cross almost all the time. It's more unusual that you're waiting for a bus to go by. So I think that, as another one of the members said, the use of using this very large street is not, it's hardly being used, and at the expense of 13th Street, which is completely busy now and not pleasant and dangerous.
I'd like to ask something. So this is very recent that you're talking about, because DOT had actually made some changes, which I guess Kimberly can tell you more about. But there were some changes that were supposed to alleviate some of that congestion on 13th. So this is right now you're talking about, right, Wendy?
I mean, we're talking still about 3 intersections, 3 traffic patterns feeding into one single lane, because one lane is now a bike lane with a giant, stanchion that's constantly being knocked over by trucks and looks very messy. And then you're dealing with 3 streets that are literally feeding into one lane. It makes no good sense.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Any other of our guests? Would you like to?
Shirley, should I ask some questions that were posted in chat?
Definitely, yes, as long as nobody else is wanting to talk right now. Let's see what we've got from the chat.
Do you want to read through it, or shall I?
You can do it. You're better at it than me.
So Judy Pesson wrote, there are no signs on 14th Street telling vehicles that they must make the first right turn. Visitors from out of town have no idea they will be getting a ticket. There should be signage warning drivers. So question for DOT is, do you envision adding signage to reinforce what the busway is?
We do have signage both on the avenues in advance of 14th Street and on 14th Street itself. Maybe Aaron can speak to the exact locations of those signs, but we definitely do have signage.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, approaching every intersection where vehicles that are on the corridor for local access purposes need to turn off, there is signage letting them know what their options are. I mean, it's something we've talked about, the sort of the precise wording of such signs, something we've talked about internally, in trying to sort of to make sure that they're working as well as they can. And you know, if the board wants to make a request to that end, it's something we're open to looking at too.
Then along with that, she stated trucks travel down West 13th. Well, I guess that's not really a question. There was a question by Joanne Schindelman. She said, brief mention was made regarding pedestrian safety and how it relates to vehicular traffic. But what is being done to ensure pedestrian safety relative to cyclists? Often there are cyclists on 14th Street riding the wrong way, down the middle lane, crisscrossing, and even on the sidewalks.
So this is an issue that, comes up from time to time at community board meetings, pedestrian safety with cyclists, and we have to work with the police department on enforcement, and we do education typically. In this case, we like to provide alternative infrastructure. So we have the protected bike lanes on 12th and 13th Street, which are intended to provide that space for cyclists. I haven't heard this complaint from 14th Street, so we can take a look and see if we are witnessing that. But in general,
Can I just add to that right now is I have noticed a lot of cyclist e-bikes on the sidewalk. And so I don't know if this is appropriate for DOT or another agency. Is it possible to actually communicate with and educate the delivery providers? That is, this is not a problem of the restaurants themselves, but of companies like Grubhub and DoorDash.
Are you referring specifically to 14th Street or more in general?
In general, and also 14th Street. Has DOT been in communication with? Are you aware of that?
I know in the past we have done specific outreach targeted at commercial cyclists. I'm not sure what we've done recently, but I can definitely look into that and see what has, if there's an opportunity to do some more of that.
That would be really wonderful.
Are there any others? Katie Bordenaro is asking something, no? Oh, this is to Katie Bordenaro. Okay. I get those are the only ones in chat, right?
So the other question in chat, again from Joanne Schindelman or Schindelheim, is there education available on the DOT website? It doesn't seem to be visible.
Sorry, education specifically about the busway or cyclists, or?
I assume she means the busway.
Sure, we definitely have a website dedicated to the bus improvements, and we also have a brochure available that describes the restrictions and helps guide people on how they can access each individual block that we started distributing last year when the busway went into effect. I'm happy to share the link to that in the chat.
Just posted it in chat.
I just posted the 14th Street Busway page in the chat.
Thanks, Erin.
And then
And there is a link there to the brochure as well. It was in
Right.
that page.
Joanne also asks about education for cyclists on the website. Are you aware of anything?
We do have a whole page all about biking. Sorry, it's hard for me to look for things on our website and talk at the same time, but I can put something up there when I find it.
Thank you. So I think that's, though, that's a bulk of the concerns here.
Okay, anybody else have any other questions? Because we're going to be gone on to our next topic. Okay.
I have one final request, which is it possible to come back 6 to 12 months from now when there is a change of conditions, or when we anticipate there will be a change of conditions if the pandemic improves?
Sure. I mean, we're always willing to come when we're asked, when we're invited to talk about our projects. So we can, it's helpful for us to have specific questions or, to have a focused discussion, but we're always happy to be here.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. And I guess we will be moving on now into our item number 2, which is an update on Citibike Infill. And that's also by DOT. And I believe Lily Gordon Coven, you are here, right, Lily?
Yep, Lily.
Yep, there you are, right? Wait a minute now, let's see. I hear you. I don't see your name or anything. I see Kimberly. Lily, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, there you are. Okay. I knew I saw you before. And how about David Andrews? I know I saw
Yeah,
his name.
he's here as well.
Is he here? Okay, okay. So you just want to update us on the types of Citibike infill that are happening in all the community board 2 neighborhoods, right?
Yeah, so we have a presentation. I was told you would be flipping through on your end. Do you have that? No?
Nope.
Okay, is it possible then to be made the host so that I can present?
Oh, yeah, in other words, you want to share the computer.
I'd like to share my screen.
Right, but we too, can we set that up?
Sure, yeah, we'll just allow you to share it right now. We don't have to.
Okay, thanks, Carter. Thanks, Carter, our chair.
Great, let me just pull it up.
Okay.
Sure, and just to introduce while she's pulling that up, last year DOT launched our 5-year phase 3 Citibike expansion, along with our partner Lyft, which will double the size of the bike share system area and triple the number of bikes that are available to riders. And as you all probably know, being in this area since the program began in 2013, we've seen like a tremendous growth in ridership.
Excuse me, I don't see anything except Kimberly Rancourt's name. Am I missing something?
No, Kim was just doing a quick introduction while I pull up the.
Yeah, I was just introducing while she pulls it up. We didn't have the presentation up yet, but essentially Lily's just going to speak to, we started phase 3 expansion this year into new neighborhoods. So we're moving further north in Manhattan, north of 130th Street. But then we're also adding new stations and more dot capacity in the existing service area, which includes Community District 2, to support the demands that come with the larger system. So Lily will get into that. I just wanted to give a little intro while waiting.
Okay, I'm gonna try to share my screen. Can you see that?
Yes.
See the presentation? Okay, great. Great. So again, thanks for having us. My name is Lily Gordon Coven. I'm the senior policy planner in the bike share group at DOT. And as Kim said, we're gonna talk just a little bit about Citibike and then our plans relating to Infill. So as many of you are aware, Citibike is New York City's bike share system. It's a network of shared bicycles intended for point-to-point transportation. It helps increase mobility and is very convenient, provides an additional transportation option, and operates 24/7. So riders also don't need to worry about bike storage or maintenance. The program is a public-private partnership run between the New York City Department of Transportation. We're responsible for planning, outreach, and oversight, and Lyft, who's responsible for day-to-day operations, equipment, and maintenance. So just a little bit about the program to date. We launched in 2013 with about 330 stations and 6,000 bikes, and have since expanded to cover much of Manhattan and expanded to Brooklyn and Queens as well. And as Kim mentioned, we are in the middle of our phase 3 expansion, which will take us to about 16,000 bikes, 40,000 bikes over about 75 square miles of the city. And it's going to take a couple of years. The planning process can be a little bit slow, but we are excited to have been installing new stations in Upper Manhattan and the Bronx this summer and fall. The system is really high ridership. It's the most successful bike share system in North America. This number is actually now slightly out of date. We have almost 109 million trips to date since 2013. And we see about 5.5 trips per bike per day. So that tells us that the bikes are being used by a lot of people and that the system is very efficient. We see around 70,000 daily trips in peak riding months. And on some of our busiest days, we see over 90,000. And this summer, starting to see over 100,000 rides in a single day. Most of those rides are taken by our annual members, which are, we have about 170,000 annual members. And then we usually see a good number of rides coming from visitors and tourists. Of course, those numbers have looked a little bit different in the past several months. Speaking of which, as everyone else, we are trying to ensure that our program is being run as safely as possible during the pandemic. So we have sort of two things to speak to here. The first is the priority of ensuring rider and employee safety. So one of the first things that we did when the pandemic began was really amp up the cleaning and disinfection process for the bike. So we're cleaning all high contact areas on the bikes, like handlebars and seat post adjusters, things like that, when they're returned to the depot for regular maintenance. And then disinfecting bikes when they're docked at high use stations, particularly those near hospitals. The crews are also using social distancing practices in the field and while handling the bikes. And the second piece is the critical workforce membership program, which provides free memberships to essential workers. We have about 20,000 critical workers in New York who've taken advantage of this program that began in March and have taken several 100,000 rides to help people commute during this really difficult time, particularly earlier in the pandemic when there was less general movement and access for different modes in the city. So to talk a little bit more about phase 3, we call it phase 3 expansion, but it's really phase 3 expansion and infill. So the expansion brings Citibike to new parts of the city and will double the geographic size of the system. So there'll be about 32,000 docks, 16,000 bikes in 35 square miles. And you can see that in the dark blue in the map on the right. Phase 3 infill will add new capacity to the existing or phase 1 and 2 service area, which is in gray. And that will be adding quite a bit of equipment and bikes into the 33 square miles that already contain almost 30,000 docks and about 13,500 bicycles. So why is infill part of this expansion? One, we know that a larger Citibike system will have more bicycles at its core. What we call rider gravity pulls bicycles to the center, which is similar to other transit modes. Riders move towards the central business districts in the morning and away in the evening. So the demand shifts throughout the day, but riders are moving throughout the system. And infill will help a larger system to function. So it's going to support increased demand from that expansion area and also meet existing unmet demand when riders can't find a bike or a dock in the central core of the system. It's also going to help improve rebalancing and overall system operations. A little bit about the timelines. and principles. So unlike the expansion process, which is a little bit slow, and we move really one community board at a time, infill dock distribution will be based on rider demand for more capacity. And it's a 4-year ongoing rollout of new stations and expanded stations. The areas with the highest demand will receive the most docks, and we're going to be working on a really rolling basis. So we'll be installing in many community boards at the same time, and we'll be coming back to community boards over the coming years. And the way we're going to use really 2, but 3 key tools to do this. So the first is new stations, which we're going to speak more about shortly. The second is expanding existing stations by adding additional docks and bikes to stations we already have on the ground. That can be sometimes a challenging feature due to our siting criteria and running into other obstacles. And then the third thing in our toolbox are the creative design solutions like 3D bridging, which you can see a photo of here. We're about to pilot this design, which allows us to have a station that's both on the sidewalk and in the roadbed. Right now, we're not able to do that, and this will help us to be more efficient with our space. A little bit about the planning process. So as I mentioned, we're going to be on a rolling installation, and that means also rolling outreach. So the main way that we are conducting outreach right now is through our online feedback portal, where we're receiving requests from riders and stakeholders about where we need to have more capacity. We have almost, I think, 1,000 comments in this feedback portal since we opened it earlier this fall. The second piece of the planning process is station siting. So we're using ridership data as well as very rigorous technical criteria to identify feasible locations. The third piece is community notification to notify property owners and the community board and key stakeholders prior to installation. We then install the stations and have ongoing monitoring. One thing we always like to point out is that the stations are not hardwired into the ground, so we're able to adjust, move things around as needed. So now we're going to talk about new stations in Community Board 2. So we're proposing 10 new stations in Community Board 2. You can see the first 5 in blue dots on the screen and the second 5 on this slide. We'll walk through them now. So the first is on Thompson and Bleecker Street on the east side of the street in the roadbed. The second is on Bleecker Street and Lafayette on the north side of the street, also in the roadbed. Then we have Morton Street and Washington Street in the north side of the street on the roadbed. King Street and Varick on the north side of the street, also in the roadbed. Spring and Hudson Street in the south roadbed. 10th Ave and West 13th Street in the east roadbed. Hudson and West 13th in the east roadbed. Greenwich and Perry in the west roadbed. West 10th and Washington Street in the north roadbed. Washington Street and Barrow Street in the east roadbed. So we'll be sending this presentation to you, and it'll also be available on our website. But I'm happy to take any questions about the station specifics. David, Andrew, my colleague, can also help answer some questions about the specific stations or about the expansion in general.
Lily, did you say this will be on your website? Would you also put the information about that in the chat?
Absolutely.
Okay, so committee. Let's see what questions you have.
Lois, can you unmute yourself, please?
Yes, thank you. I have 2 questions, but the first one, and then I'll let other committee members ask questions, and then I'll come back to another question. I heard that there's a program, one of the public officials, city public officials, said that they were going to expand Citibikes for students that lived in NYCHA, and that they could have a free access to the Citibike so that they could go to public school and then back again. And I was wondering, is this true, or is this for the future? And can you expand on this?
Sure, yeah, that's a great question. So we do have a program. We used to have a program called Citibike for Youth, and now it's called Lift Up. which provides free memberships to young people ages 16 to 24. And I can also put some information about that in the chat, and we can be sure to email that to you as well. Unfortunately, you have to be 16 to ride a Citibike. And so for school age kids, it's really only available for older students. But yes, we do have that program. And I know that that's for, I'm not sure the specific criteria. I think it's for anyone ages 16 to 24, but I'll check on that. We also have a program called Reduced Fare Bike Share, which is available to all NYCHA residents, regardless of age. And that is a discounted program where residents, NYCHA residents can sign up for a $5 a month membership with no annual commitment. So if you are only planning, to ride in the summer months and you're not being charged for the winter months and things like that, that's available to anyone who lives in NYCHA, as well as anyone who receives SNAP.
So just to clarify this, the 16 to the 24-year age, how do they prove that it's that they have to prove that they go to public school or they go to CUNY or something like that? How does that work? And that they prove that they live in NYCHA? Can you just explain that a little further?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not sure of the technical logistics for the Lift Up program. I can find out more information. For NYCHA, you sign up through, I believe, like by showing proof that you have a NYCHA address, some sort of bill or lease or anything that you might otherwise use to prove residency. And then there's also programs, we work with the tenant associations at different NYCHAs to help folks who maybe, if you're a younger person and you're not on the lease or you don't have a bill, to help folks get registered that way.
Okay. I see that Janet has raised her hand. Yeah, again, we have to get out of here at a certain time, so let's move along. Okay, Jan.
I just have two questions. One is very specific. Where on 13th and Hudson is the bike dock going? Will it be on 13th or will it be on Hudson? And if it's on Hudson, is it north or south of 13th?
I'm going to let David, can you jump in and answer that one?
I can tell you that the current bike stand right now for Citibikes is on the northeast side of 13th and Hudson. And it is just off the corner.
Well,
it's on the northeast corner of Hudson and 13th on 13th Street.
Hi, yes, this is David here. We will be coming onto Hudson Street, and I believe it's between 13th and 14th Streets on the east side in the parking lane of the protected bike lane.
Okay, thank you. And then another just general question. I'm curious, you opened up that saying the ridership gravitates towards the central business district. With COVID and only 10 to 15% of office workers and patterns changing, are you seeing new patterns? I mean, obviously the beauty of Citibike is if our patterns shift, you can you can move docks around all over again. So I'm just curious where are people going now?
Yeah, it's really interesting because obviously we're not seeing that sort of AM, PM commute, for Citibike or for other modes at all. As you mentioned, what we've seen is a lot of sort of more folks that maybe were used to only taking the bus or the subway, and they decided they felt more comfortable on a bike, using a bike instead of some other mode of transportation to do errands or to commute to visit friends or to go to outdoor dining, things like that. So we're looking at the patterns and kind of seeing how they evolve. But in general, even though we're not seeing the same kinds of commuting patterns, we're still seeing high usage across the system.
And is it still gravitating towards the center?
I would say that it's still gravitating towards the center somewhat, but certainly not as much as we usually see. And I think part of that is that, even though most people are not going back to their office, there are still some folks going to the office. There's also a lot of people using maybe to commute to a restaurant job or something else like that. So there still is some of that flow, but not to the magnitude that we usually see.
Thank you.
Okay, and
Michael Levin is
no,
next.
no, Adam Zeldin, because we're doing committee first, and then we'll do board members.
Thank you. I have a two-part question, and the first part may invalidate the second. Part one, have there been complaints by neighbors about the noise of the docking stations? And then part two, if so, are there any new toolkit items related to station enhancements to mitigate some of the noise?
That's a good question. I don't think that, I can't think of any concerns about noise from stations, compared to car honking or any other noise, sort of ambient New York City noise. The process of docking and undocking a bike at one of these stations is pretty low. So no, I don't think that's something that we've really heard about.
It's good to hear.
Okay, and now Michael Levine. Oh,
You have
Dan
to unmute, Michael.
Yes, thank you. My question is not about expansion, but the opposite, contraction. Are there any locations citywide, and particularly in CB2 here in Manhattan, where there is underutilization of the bike racks and where you might want to shrink some of the stations so that you could free up bikes for other locations where there is higher utilization? Have you seen any locations that might be shrinked or shrunken, I'm not sure what the word is, in citywide or in CB2 that you might contemplate in the future?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. I think, we are very committed to making the system as efficient and successful as possible, but Lyft is even more so because they're the ones who own the system and are getting revenue from it. So they are very eager to make sure that we're optimizing the placement of bikes and docks as much as possible. So in this process of infill and expansion, we're looking at the existing network already to see, what stations are the busiest. Those are the ones we want to focus on. If there are places that have lower utilization, maybe yes, we'll look to move docks from one location to another as need be. Or move a whole station if it turns out that that station is not in the best location. As a general rule, we try to have stations placed every couple of blocks. We want people to always be within a 3 to 5 minute walk of a Citibike station when they're inside the service area. So it's likely that we are not going to pull a whole chunk of stations, but in areas where there's less demand, and certainly maybe in more residential neighborhoods, you'll see smaller stations and then larger stations in areas where we know that there's very high demand and a high turnover of bikes.
Right. And Lois, you want to follow up a question?
No, yeah, it's different. I live on Thompson Street and Bleecker. So could you repeat or explain again where the new station is going to be on Thompson and Bleecker and why you're choosing that spot?
Hi, yes, I can speak to that. The station is planned for the east side of Bleecker Street. I'm sorry, the east side of Thompson Street, south of Bleecker. And the station will be in the parking lane on the east side of the street. And we chose this location because we're trying to fill a network gap in the area. There's a bit of a longer walk to get to a station if you're in this immediate area. And just to speak to this location, I'd say one of the benefits is this street has a parking lane that is sufficiently wide enough for a station, whereas several of the parallel streets are narrower or don't have marked parking lanes. And this location also has no conflicts with open restaurants. And so those are some of the primary factors for that selection.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
No,
Thank you. I think it's necessary.
Okay,
I
you know what,
remember-
we're gonna move on
Thank you.
because we really have to make room for other folks and for our business session. We have to get out of here before 6:30. So thank you. I see that Samir Lavinja has a question too.
Hi, super excited to see the one on Washington Barrow. That one on Hudson and Barrow is always full. I had a quick question about what percentage of the new docks are going to be on the roadbed versus the sidewalks? And in general in the system, what does that percentage look like?
That's a good question. In general, we really try to tailor the system's needs to community preferences. So in some neighborhoods, there's a strong preference to place stations in the roadbed, and in other places it's vice versa. So I don't know off the top of my head the percentage system-wide of docks that are on the sidewalk versus on the roadbed. In this neighborhood, I think most of the stations that we're proposing to add for infill are in the roadbed. But I can take a closer look at that, unless, I don't know if David, you have that off the top of your head.
Thank you. And Sean Scott? Sean?
Yes, hello. Yeah, thank you for the presentation. Citibike here myself, and to Samir's point, and looks like Janet's point, that the docks are often full in this area, specifically like Thompson, Sullivan, McDougal. Is there any plan to require Citibike to increase their rebalancing activities? I did notice that year over year, rebalancing per month has dropped from 200,000 to only 50,000. So a 75% decrease. And, you know, you can add more docks, but I think people bike to the village, get drunk, and then take a cab home or whatever, which is responsible to some extent, but leaves the village with constantly full docks. And adding, you know, 50 docks is great, but these bikes are never cleared. It's not like, you know, they're stored and then in the morning they get emptied. So does the DOT have any plans to, I guess the question is, yeah, does the DOT have plans to enforce an SLA for you must rebalance at least X% of the system every month?
Yeah, we do have SLAs in place regarding rebalancing and stations that are blocked, either where there's no bikes or the station is fully blocked. And so we do have those in place, and infill is one way that we're trying to approach the rebalancing issue, but we're also looking at others, and things like using valets, which we've seen very successful in other parts of the city, and other tools as well, like the program like Bike Angels. You know, as the pattern you described of folks biking to the West Village and then not being in a state to bike home is perhaps somewhat unique. In other places, adding infill capacity will address a lot of the need to rebalance. So there can be more targeted rebalancing.
Okay, thank you. And I think we're going to move into our business session now. I see we don't have any more questions or comments. So I thank you very much, Bike Chair, Citibike folks, for joining us. And we are looking forward to looking at the report that you just presented. Now that we will have access to it, we'll take a real good look. And we'll give you any additional information, you know, that comes out of this too. And so thanks for attending. And gang, we're going to move into business session right now.
Thanks,
So,
Shirley.
Thank you. So committee members, first the busway. And I guess my first question is this, is that do we want to say anything in a resolution, since we mostly said things in resolutions before? Anybody have any comment on that? This is for the committee. And everybody is welcome to hear.
I mean, you sent us the letter and it pretty much is the same thing, and they didn't respond to the letter. And, you know, we had the resolutions like you said. So I don't know if it's going to help much. I think there's some disagreement too, just based on the chat of our vision for 14th Street. So we need to get a discussion of that if we were going to present anything. For instance, Janet, you might want to talk about why you're not in favor of putting some licensed vehicles on 14th Street and why we don't see eye to eye on that. Can I ask you that, Janet?
Sure, I just think you start eating away at it. And, you know, it works now because there are 50 to 80, you know, the bus ridership is up and the buses move. And then once you start, you know, yes, the trucks are supposed to be there. And if they're not there, you know, yeah, we need better signage to draw them there. But I just don't, want to sort of see it get eaten away at. You know, so that's my feeling about it. You know, and these wonderful images, they show, you know, 50 people on a bus, it takes up this much space, and 50 people in a car goes from 3rd Avenue to 8th Avenue. So anyway, that's my feeling about it. And before doing anything like that, you know, the only sad thing about the DOT not continuing to collect data is that we may have seen things improve, because drivers start to take different patterns and they discover, oh, this street doesn't work, we'll go to this street. And, you know, but we don't know, you know, we don't have the data on that. So it's kind of too bad that we stopped getting that.
So we really could use the data. Okay.
But I would agree with that we did do a resolution very recently that covered the major issues. And they seem to be going back to address university to create perhaps, you know, create a fully shared street so that it would reduce some conflicts, and that we might want to wait to do anything at this moment.
Right, thanks, Janet. Yeah, I do want to point out that besides the request for a shared street on University Place, we've also, in another resolution, have asked for a study, and we even have that on our budget request to have a study of actually what we're talking tonight about monitoring the street and evaluating what's happening and perhaps making some nips and tucks, meaning modifications if necessary. And that, I guess from my point of view, maybe now is not the time to even think about that, because things are still so scattered during the pandemic that we really don't know what's going to happen. But there may be some kinds of things that can be balanced a little bit more. So sure, we're asking DOT to take a look. They're saying they do. And I don't know, should we be asking them to, when they monitor, to report back to us? Anybody have any ideas on that?
That's what I would like to see. That was what I was getting to with one of my questions is, right now we're seeing an artificial traffic pattern because of the pandemic. You know, I would like to better understand what that morphs into at a later date. And also that's dependent not just on what happens with the pandemic and lockdown situations, but also, you know, will some of these things that we put into place, like open streets and open restaurants, remain with us even after the pandemic? How will that impact the needs along the side streets and the safety concerns? So it would be nice to be able to look at what the balance is of what we're expecting from bus transportation and making it easier and faster versus some of the stresses and strains.
Yeah, do you think that requires a resolution?
I don't think so.
No, but it's something for us to keep in mind a few months from now and possibly review again, I would say. So I'm just going to write that down. And of course, I'll be doing a report. Anyone else, either on the committee or community board members, if you have any thoughts beyond that? Okay, so we'll do a report on that. And then I think the same thing with the Citibike. Is that it's just really a report, I think, that we have to give of the new infill. And unless anybody has very specific comments.
The only thing I see, you know, a lot in chat is about the fact that we do get, you know, the rebalancing and the West Village does get packed. You know,
Yeah.
and I've come back into, you know, on a Friday, Saturday, anytime, and you really, you gotta look around a lot to find somewhere to park. So not that we want a resolution, but somewhere to just say that they should improve their rebalancing in the West Village, if that's at all possible.
And Shirley, it's
Yes.
Lois. It's a very interesting thing about the person who asked about the noise from the docking, because I have heard consistent noise from the docking. It's not, the bike just doesn't slip in. It goes in and bang and bang and bang and then out when you're taking it out. Now, the new one that's going to be on Bleecker and Thompson, there is a building, a residential building that is right above there. And I think that somehow they have to re-examine how to slip those bikes in. I'm not against it because it's important, but to slip those bikes in and those bikes out, because they are consistently banging and it's really loud.
Okay, Lily, are you there? Did you hear that from Lois? Because it's a good observation, especially being, at least from my point of view, anyhow, being in a residential area. Lily, are you still there? I think
I don't think so.
No. Okay, well, I mean, I'm not so sure though that needs a resolution. That could be something. I would be happy to send an email to Jennifer Leon with these various observations and copy.
Yes.
How's that?
Yes, thank you. And I know this is, I'm the one who has the 6:30 SLA committee meeting, by the way.
Okay.
So I know we're in a rush, but I would like to, I know this is like, you know me, the committee knows me. It would be really good that if some way a person cannot go on a city bike if they're intoxicated, because people do ride the bikes intoxicated. And it's like real crazy down in the village, in Greenwich Village. And I know that's an impossibility, but cars don't move. You can't open your car and move your car if you're intoxicated. There's certain features, and it's really crazy, but maybe futuristically it could happen. Because driving your bike
to
drunk
look
is
into
crazy.
how to handle it or something like that. I mean, does
Yeah.
anybody know about that, Janet? Do you know anything about that, Dan? Whether there are any kind of guidelines about intoxication on city bikes?
I don't.
It's a matter of enforcement, really. And
I don't know.
that's
I don't.
the problem.
I can't even. Janet, have you ever heard of a intoxicated cyclist getting pulled over?
No.
No, you too. You too.
I'd like to see some of the bicycles on the sidewalks get.
Okay.
Okay, listen, gang, it's 6:25 and SLA is coming. We got
Perfect.
Lois, can you send me the link for the Zoom?
I could try because
Or
I'll
Carter?
try. I want to get into my meeting, but maybe Carter could do
Carter
it.
can do it.
Yeah, I'll text it to you.
Thank you.
Okay, great.
Shirley, thank you so much.
Okay,
Now
so
for the double header.
thank you all. Great meeting. We learned a lot. Hey, right?
Yeah.
So see you at full board, if not before. And enjoy SLA for those who are attending. Take care. See you soon.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Enjoy the
Thank you.
news and the politics.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye,
Take
Shirley.
care. Bye-bye. I mean, au revoir, because we will see each other soon. So long.